got back from Napa and I asked you guys to share with me some running questions on my Instagram story. I'm always getting questions about it, and I am by no means an expert. I am a relatively novice runner, but I feel like that's helpful for people who are just starting out. It can be such like a gate-kept thing. I don't know why, because it just seems so simple. You just go outside and run basically, but there's so many like nuances and like ways to take care of your body that I feel like you don't really know when you're first starting out, and you just kind of have to figure it out. But since I have done all of that so recently, I figured it would be helpful to share some of my experiences and answer questions that people have a lot. So without further ado, let's get into these questions. Okay, the first one is what made me get into running. I literally could not run a mile until I was 20 years old, and the first time I really like got into it, I guess I would say, would be when my mom and I trained for a 5K. I was studying abroad the second half of the summer of 2019, like while I was home from college, and so I was home in Nashville for a month, and my mom and I were like, why don't we just do a 5K? Like, I had literally never been able to run a mile in my entire life, and we did it super slowly. It was like a couch to 5K training program. So that was my first real like stint into running, and then it kind of fell off. But I would run a little bit during quarantine. Actually, when I was home, I'd go to a park and run like 2-3 miles, honestly most days, just to like get out of my house and just like clear my head. And then when I moved here, I would run occasionally. It's so beautiful in LA. I feel so lucky that I am able to like run here because it's just so nice all the time. So I would run occasionally, like 2 miles ish, and then a friend of mine at the time was like, I'm gonna do the Malibu half in November, like you should sign up for it and stuff. We didn't run it together. I actually ran it with another one of my friends, but I decided to sign up, and honestly, I feel like if I had not like posted about it and started like talking about the fact that I was gonna do it, it would have been harder for me to stay accountable in terms of like my training. And honestly, I might have even not done it, because training for your first half is like no joke. It is really hard, and I think the hardest part about it is that mental hump you have to get over to be like, no, I'm actually gonna do this. I'm gonna train 3-4 days a week. And yeah, I think that was the most difficult part at the beginning, but I think it's been kind of a slow burn of me getting into running. But honestly, it has really changed my life, and you know, not only like my digestion's better, I also just feel really proud of myself, which I feel like is the best part about running. Like when you go out and run 4 miles or something in the morning, you feel so good, you feel so accomplished, you feel so proud of yourself. Especially when I'm training for a half, the fact that I can go out and run like 10 miles and then come home and just go about my normal day, I'm like, wow, like I really did that. I think that the confidence it instills in you is like the best part. That was a really long answer, but yeah, that's sort of how my progression of running has progressed, I guess. Okay, next question is, how did you get into training? I'm trying, but some days are so hard. I totally feel you. I think really starting little by little, especially if you don't have a lot of experience running, and just knowing that it is going to suck at first. Like, it's going to be so hard to get yourself out there, but after a little while, it is going to feel so good, and your body is going to crave being outside and running. I know that sounds crazy, but I think knowing that other people also feel that way in the beginning of training and you're not alone kind of helps a little bit. And you just have to be so strong mentally and be like, no, I know this sucks, but I'm going to do it. And you're gonna feel so good about yourself afterwards. I think like the post-run feeling is what you have to chase in the beginning until you can feel like good and comfortable on your runs, if that makes sense. But I totally feel you, because there were some days when I trained for my first half last year that I was like, how the hell am I ever gonna run 13 miles? That's insane. But I did it, and now I've done it twice, so. Also a runner, have you ever had Achilles tendonitis? If so, tips, tricks, advice for recovery. I have not, but I have struggled with really tight calves and shin splints and like shin pain. It honestly just really comes from me not like stretching out my legs enough pre-run. Basically, I just try to really stretch them out before my runs and after my runs. I think like making sure you are warming up correctly is very important. There's a ton of YouTube videos. I have one YouTube video in particular that I watch before every single one of my runs and do it. Like, I probably could recite it by heart. But there's a lot of people specifically on YouTube that are more like doctors and PTs and whatever that can like give you a little bit more information about that, because I'm obviously not a doctor. but I think maybe looking up some videos on YouTube for like specific like Achilles stretches and stuff like that would be helpful. But I actually have a friend who is a personal trainer, so she gave me kind of like a warm-up regimen for my calves that like really changed the game. Her name is Abby with an I _ Fitsta on Instagram. I'll put it on the screen, so you can always DM her if you guys want to. Fourth question, would love to hear how you got started and tips. Just started walking daily and itching to run. Okay, I already answered a bulk of this question, but I think the first thing you need to do, honestly, if you want to get into running, is finding a good pair of shoes, because that will literally make or break your experience. I have this place in LA called Front Runner that I go to, and it's connected to a Surefoot, which is like those customized ski boots, which I actually also have, and they're amazing. But you stand on these machines and they can scan your foot and give you recommendations based on like the literal 3D scans of your foot that they can see. I have Asics gel nimbuses with Surefoot inserts in them. They are so comfortable. I've only used that combination since I started training for half marathons and stuff. So I think finding a good pair of shoes is like so crucial, and also knowing when to get new shoes, because you will be able to tell. Like, they'll feel amazing for a really long time, and then you'll start to have like a little bit of pain sometimes in places that you don't usually, and you're like, oh, how long have I been wearing these shoes? How many miles have I run in them? Maybe it's time to get a new pair. Getting new shoes, and honestly, I think getting like cute running clothes. I know this is so silly and superficial, but like when you feel cute, just like with any workout, it's gonna make you more excited. That's what really is gonna set you up for success. The next question is also about running sneakers. This person is looking for a good pair because she just got into running and is doing a 5K. Like I said, I would try to find somewhere in your city that they can scan your foot and give you a good recommendation, because honestly, everyone's feet are different. I've heard really good things about the New Balance running shoes. Asics makes the gel nimbuses, and there's another one that they have, the Kayanos, that are really good too. Brooks has really good running sneakers. But yeah, I would definitely try to find like Front Runner. I know in Nashville there's a store called Fleet Feet. There's stores like that all over, but just do some research and find somewhere that they can like assess your gait, and they have the machines and everything like that. Those places are amazing, and it's worth the investment, honestly, for your safety even. Next question is, new runner here, running feels like death usually. My boyfriend says that's just the first few miles. True or false? Yes, that is 100% true. I feel like, honestly, I prefer doing long runs because you get to experience the actual like joy of running for longer. Because for me at least, it's usually like the first 2 miles, and sometimes even the first 3 miles when I'm doing a long run are kind of shitty, and you're like, why am I doing this? I could just stop right now. But you keep going and then you feel amazing. But if I'm only running like 4 miles, I only really get like 2 miles, maybe a mile and a half, maybe 2.5 miles of like feeling that joy, which is not very long in the long run. So yes, that is 100% true. I definitely experienced that. Okay, part 2 to that question is, does it get better the higher mileage you go? Yes, 100%. I mean, there's obviously a certain threshold where it's gonna get harder with the longer miles, but I think like if you're feeling good in your body, and if like you're feeling good mentally, like I do think usually the longer I go, like I feel better. But honestly, it's so mental. Like once you get to the last mile, you're like, oh, I just want this to be over. But like up until then, you feel pretty good, at least for me. All right, next question is the training regimen for a half marathon. So I would say, for me personally, I have followed an 11-week training program both times I've trained for half marathons. And I literally just looked it up on Google and kind of like backtracked it and put it into my Google Calendar and started. I think my last half was in November, and I think I started towards the end of August. But yeah, that was me running Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then a long run on Saturdays. Obviously, if I was traveling or things were going on, like sometimes days would get shifted around, but that is generally like the training program that I followed. And I would say if you are like totally new to running and you couldn't even run a mile like I couldn't a few years ago, I would say to do something more like a couch to 5K program, and once you get up to the 5K point, then start on an 11-week program. Because I feel like once you can run like 2-3 miles comfortably, that's like a good starting point. So I would definitely start earlier if you're like not an experienced runner at all. And those training programs for couch to 5Ks, you can just Google, there's a ton of them on Google Images. And then for this half marathon, I definitely trained a little bit less, which also was probably not ideal. But I have kept up running. Like I try to run once or twice a week, and I have ever since I ran my last half. So for the entire first 6 months of the year, I was at least running once a week. And so when it got to be time to train, I was running Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And I was just doing 4 or 5 miles on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then on Saturdays it was a long run, and every long run gets longer, and sometimes you'll stay on the same mileage for like 2 weeks at a time. Sometimes it'll go up, it just depends. Anyways, this time was kind of difficult because it was during the summer, so not only was it quite warm sometimes when I was running, I also have been traveling a lot. I have had people in town. My sister came for a whole week and I didn't run at all that week. I went to Nashville and then I got COVID right before my half marathon. Like, I literally tested negative 7 days before I ran. So that made this one like definitely a lot harder than the first one. Genuinely, I felt really good the entire half marathon that I did in Malibu in November. I think it was like a mixture of me missing a few long runs because of traveling and COVID and, you know, the whole thing. Because honestly, it takes a really long time for your body to bounce back from COVID. It's like intense. Next question is, what helped you get into running and stay consistent? I feel like I've answered what helped me get into running, but in terms of staying consistent, I genuinely feel like you need some place to document your running, because I feel like I'm not a very competitive person. Like, I'm not really running for time or anything. I'm honestly pretty slow. But I feel like me trying to just like feel better on every run and feel good for longer distances, that's what I'm really chasing. And so I think having some place to document your runs, whether it's online or if it's, you know, in a journal or something, and just like tracking your progress, it'll make you feel so proud of yourself. And I feel like that's what runners really chase, is just that like that pride that you feel when you accomplish something difficult. But I do think, like I said earlier, like since I was posting about it on Instagram and sharing it with people, like even if you're not a content creator and if you don't necessarily have a huge following, I think sharing it online is something that will keep you motivated, because you're like, okay, I told people I can't back out of this now. So that's sort of, I feel like that's like a little bit of a cheat into getting yourself to stay motivated and consistent, but it really works. Next question is, when running, how do you stay motivated to finish that run? A lot of these questions are very similar. I would say when I'm actually running, I literally don't give myself an option to stop, or unless my body is like feeling bad, I don't give myself an option to stop, and I don't give myself an option to quit early. I know my body pretty well at this point, and if I'm feeling like faint or I'm feeling unwell, then I will stop, obviously. But in general, if my body feels good, even if I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this right now, I kind of just don't give myself an option. I think that as you get more into running, you become more self-disciplined. There's something to be said about planning on doing something and completing it, especially if it's like early in the morning before you start your day. You just feel so good. And so I think when you're running, you kind of have to build up that mental strength to be like, no, I'm not stopping. Like, I'm gonna finish. Honestly too, I like to finish my runs at the beach a lot, and then I'll have Arthur come pick me up or something. And so I think like having that like fun experience at the end of my run will keep me motivated. Like, I love being near the water in the mornings, but you can also motivate yourself in different ways. You could also, you know, go eat a really yummy meal when you get home, or like go out to lunch after a long run. Or I don't know, say like if I finish all my runs this week, I'm gonna buy myself a new workout set. I feel like there's a lot of more like small things you could do to motivate yourself until you build up that mental strength. Also, if you're comfortable with it, running with another person really helps stay motivated. I will say I don't usually prefer running with people because I don't like feeling like I'm competing with people. But I enjoyed much more my half marathon when I was running with my friend Jenna, because like we were both in it together, and it can feel kind of isolating when you're around so many people but you're like alone, if that makes sense, and you're kind of like out in the middle of nowhere and all that stuff. And so I think when I was doing my half this past weekend, when I was by myself, I'd kind of be in the middle of nowhere and be like, oh shit, like I'm really by myself. Like I could stop right now if I wanted to, but I didn't, obviously. I actually stopped a few times because like I said, my body was really hurting on that run, but I didn't walk, so that was good. I didn't really have anyone to be like, all right, well, we're in this together, you know. I think it can be a little bit isolating, so I do really enjoy running one with somebody else. So those are a few things. Hopefully that helps. This is the last question. How did you get started? What did your first running sessions look like? Okay, my first running sessions training for my first half marathon, I will say I did my 11-week training program, but I would run 2-ish miles at a time, like relatively consistently over the summer up until August when I actually started training. And those training sessions were horrible. I was running really slow. I was not feeling good. I was running in my Hokas too because I didn't really realize the importance of good running shoes, and they were really hurting my feet. Shin splints are also something that you really experience when you're first running because it's very normal to get shin splints, and it's not something that should deter you from running. It just means your body is getting used to you putting that much pressure on it, and they will go away. Just make sure you're like rolling out your calves and stretching and warming up properly. But I think that that is something that's really painful in the beginning, but it's not something that's gonna like hurt you. At least I don't take my word for it because I'm not a doctor, but like that's just what I've been told, is that eventually they go away, and that's what I've noticed in my own body. And so I think that was really hard for me at the beginning, and it was hard for me to stay motivated to run because I was like, this is just so painful. My shins hurt so bad. So that was difficult. Yeah, I remember in my first training sessions, I was like, how the hell am I ever going to be able to do this? I genuinely think that if anyone tried to train and run a half marathon, that they could, if you were able-bodied and, you know, healthy. If you're in that stage right now where things hurt and you're like, why did I sign up for this? Just know that the feeling of completing that is so worth it. Like the feeling, honestly, the feeling of completing your training and the fact that you worked so hard for something that you wanted to do, you know, it might be a bucket list item for you to run a half marathon or even a full marathon. And I think crossing a finish line after doing a task that was like so insanely difficult, it's just the most rewarding thing ever. Those were all the questions. I hope that this was helpful and gave you guys some insight on like how to run a half marathon, how to start, what shoes to look for, all that kind of stuff. Like I said, running has really changed my life. It just makes me feel so much more confident in myself. I feel like I look and feel my best when I am running consistently. And yeah, I will say too, okay, this is the last thing. I think I was struggling with this past half marathon too because I wasn't feeling my body very well the entire time. I had a lot of trips planned, a lot of like fun events, so I was drinking a lot, and I think that that really like messed with me. And when I was training for my half the first time, I was eating really clean. I wasn't drinking as much. I didn't have as many trips and things like that, and it happened before the holidays. Honestly, the fall is my favorite time to do a half because you don't have as many things planned and it's not gonna like mess with your training. I think finding a chunk of time where you don't have too many things going on is the best way to set yourself up for success, because I definitely did not do that this past time because I just had so much going on, and I guess I didn't really realize how much I had going on when I signed up for this half. But I'm really glad I did it. So yeah, I think fueling your body properly is very important, as well as like fueling your body on your runs. Something that I would say too, sorry, I'm kind of just rambling on now, but something that I would say too is you need to properly fuel your body before and during your runs. I really like Goop Packs. They don't taste good, but I kind of just like swallow them, and I'll take them about every like 45 minutes, and sometimes that's what I'll eat before my run. I don't like to eat anything like too crazy. I'll have like a piece of toast or a protein waffle and like a little bit of water mixed with some pre-workout for breakfast before my long runs. The shorter runs, I don't really usually eat much before. Like I won't usually eat anything, so I'll just have a meal when I get back. But for long runs, you need to be bringing some sort of sustenance like a Goop Pack. Also, you need to bring water, because the first time I ever ran like 7 miles, I felt like I was gonna die afterwards because I just like didn't properly fuel myself. I have this fanny pack. I'll insert a picture of it and I'll link it down below, but it's from like Amphipod, I don't know, it's from REI, I'm pretty sure, but it holds a water bottle in it, so I'll mix some electrolytes in with the water and bring it on my run. But yeah, you need to be properly fueling your body for your runs, and be trying to like have lots of fruit and vegetables, have a lot of carbs before your long runs. Like make sure you are eating well and eating enough, because that also I feel like really affected me in my last training and in this past training and the first time I trained for a half. Okay, I will get off my soapbox, but I hope this inspired some of you guys to run a half. I hope it like helped some of you guys who are signed up for 5Ks, for halves, or anything like that. It's such an amazing hobby to have as an adult, something that makes you feel good, something that's really good for you, good for your heart, good for your digestion, good for your body in general. And yeah, I am really happy that I completed this last half and that it didn't go too terribly, and that I was a little bit faster actually than my first half. And I hope you guys enjoyed this vlog, and I will see y'all in the next one.